Welcome, traders, investors, punters, and dribblers. Another busy week. Closing up here on January the 21st of the year 2022 from the heart of Texas and the bowels of California. We are Traders Community, and we're going to go through today's week and today's markets. Pretty well, much as explained. As expected, it's gone technically very well. As we've said, a big week for stocks. I think there was a lot of records broken, Radavi, wasn't it? We were going through earlier. Worst in so many years. The Russell itself closed at 52-week lows. It's down 17.46% from its all-time high. Nasdaq is down 15% from its all-time high and the lowest level since June 21, and it's on track to be the worst January ever in the history of the Nasdaq. The S&P is doing a lot better. It is only down 7% from its all-time high, and but this week saw its first close below the 200-day moving average since June 2020, and the Dow Jones fell 1,600 points this week and is down 6% from its all-time high. So we saw a lot of, as we've been talking about with bonds, safe haven buying, so a lot of recovery on bonds. We saw a lot of safe haven buying in get this week. How did gold finish up today? So we'll go through that. As far as oil, had another big week. A lot of these things obviously closed off their highs just with the selling in the stock markets. Natural gas had a big bounce today, up nearly 20 cents. Remember, it's all about weather. And as we've often said, if you don't trade natty, don't trade it. Understand that. It's weather and the punt angle. I know the punters and dribblers want to get into it, but you won't be in it for too long if you muck around with it, right? So let's get through it. Look at the charts. Some blood on the streets is the theme today. So let's have a look at our charts, how we went. Let's start off with Madavi, actually, because he absolutely nailed Nasdaq this week. So if you want to take us away with Nasdaq, mate.
Well, like we talked about all week, there's something broken in the markets, and you can see it by not bouncing. I mean, today it did the same thing, but sold off even sooner. Then, we got a bounce in the morning. It went positive, and just had no strength. And when I tried to go positive with it, I think me and Andrew both did, and we just say, man, this thing can't go up. And we, it just got stopped out, turned around, and went short and traded it from mostly the short side, and being comfortable if I got in a bad position on the downside compared to the upside. The upside I would take a tighter loss.
Right.
On the downside, I could have a little bit more leeway, thinking that eventually at the end of the day the market's going to be even down more. But it's really fast. I mean, you just can't see the movements are so fast they can throw you off. Just got to be patient. And, and if your theory, your project, what do you think is going to work for you, and it's been working, well, keep it going until it doesn't
work. Until it's broken, right?
It's broken.
I mean, right? Yeah, and it's very, very fast. So you've got to know your levels. You got a really combination of knowing your levels where you think, charts, resistance. A big one today was option levels, because it was the biggest option expiration ever, wasn't it, today in the history? A lot of to do that's with January leaps. And as Madavi said, you got to watch that order flow, because it's just like that meme, it's gone, And you saw it. So it sold off, then it had that big rally, and then it just gave it away. And here's that one we're talking about. It couldn't even bounce in the afternoon and just went. It had this little suck in here. Sorry, mate.
So what it would do is they'll run up like it's going to be the next bull run, and most people would get out of there or get stopped out, or they go long and they just get pounded from there. So you got to be very careful of that. not to lose your good position for a bad position. I got a couple times in it because that'll cost you big.
Right, and so it's the old adage, right? A trader's bad position becomes an investment. Well, from what I can gather, reading on a lot of angry people out there on the FinTwits and the trading rooms, and our checkmate made a good point earlier that if those Reddit rooms and all that, they're way down in activity. So a lot of people obviously walked away or been hurt in the market. So keep that in mind if you think it's going to be the same bounce or destruction, and it will change the other way. But so today you had, this week. So the 2 days before today had massive programs of massive put buying and then selling on it. A lot of that's hedging activity, or because VIX went up, they had to also hedge their delta. If you remember, we did a thing on the top side about 2 months ago now about how Apple went up purely from delta chasing. And remember, for options, understand theta and understand vega or delta more than all the other stuff, the charms and all that stuff. You got to do what really matters and what hurts. And in a fast market, you all that stuff doesn't matter, right, mate? So, and we kept an eye on VIX, and when VIX turned, there wasn't much panic in it until about here, that last bit today, right? This is a 240. You can see the flag I just put up at 2 hourly. And if you look at weekly... Sorry, mate?
You streaming now?
Yeah, we're live on YouTube. Welcome, our Czech friend.
Oh, okay.
And so we're looking at... Here's the 50 moving average that we talked about yesterday, remember, mate?
Yep.
And we're under. We held that this morning, and it bounced. And that's the one where we gave up on it when it just couldn't go, and it closed underneath it. And here's that low that we're talking about. It hasn't quite got to it yet. Let's blow that up. Where is it? So that's that low. We're almost there, but look where the cloud is, all the way down here at 13,700. So that's another 700 handles on the Nasdaq, mate.
Oh, good. We got to clean more people's clocks.
Oh, Roman just left. Yeah, and so almost a double bottom here. But if we get under here, so this is 2.8, we talked about yesterday, there's nothing really down to 0.8, which is this breakup level, which is 13,700 we spoke about, and 13,200 or 13,150. So that Nasdaq, and as I said, we were told today, we haven't fact checked it, but from a good source, I think it was Wall Street Journal or someone, that this is on track to be the worst Nasdaq ever. So it's got to put in a good week next week not to do that. And we do have a Fed next week, so that could be something. And we got earnings. Some of these earnings have been brutal. How much did Netflix finish down today, mate? What do you remember? What the percentage? Was it 20% on the day and 50% from the high? Something crazy. So that makes up this index. You know, Apple, all these stocks are just getting whacked. But there's a lot of these high flyers that are down 80, 90% already. Like, quite incredible, really. Okay, so let's have a look at... I'm more a SPOOS guy, as you know. So what did we do? So SPOOS hasn't got to that 50 yet. See that? So we have, as I said, this either meets it or this meets it. It's pretty simple. We've called this either a 5, which means the total, or it's 5 of a 1 if you're a super, super bull and money becomes worthless. That's what that would be. On a daily, you can see this was just a great trade this week. We've been able to stay in it most of the week, where it broke this channel, came back and tested it, and then crapped all the way down all week. I mean, that was just a classic. There was some options we had that were worthless up here. And, you know, when they're worthless, I just basically keep them. One today was 2 cents here, 4 cents. We flogged that today for like, what was it, 7.20. So it gives you an idea. Now think about the other side of that. the person that sold that has to probably just held it up here. If they didn't cover it, they have to cover that all the way down. That's kind of what fuels these meetings, right? Moves. And you had this other, when it broke here, was also the bottom of the cloud. So it was a pretty straightforward move. We haven't seen a move like this since COVID. So no real surprises when it accelerates, when everyone's the same way. And remember, we really want to focus more on psychology and everything than anything. You need to have the techniques, but you got to have your mind right? Would that be a fair comment? There's your 240. You can see here was that sell when it breaks, it just goes, right? And a quick look at what it actually did today. So this was that buy, and then it gave it in here. Was there any catalyst today for it to go down other than options? I don't think there was, and just everyone trying to get out of all their positions. Remember, there's big shorts out there and big longs. The shorts are in control. So until they lose control, you have to respect these moves. Okay, let's have a look at the Russell, and I'll give you back, Madavi, if you can talk to the Russell again, because you nailed this again. Where's that one? Hang on. First, yeah, here. Firstly, let's look at this with the Russell. We broke through this channel this week, that thick blue line. We tested it on Monday or Tuesday, and we have not looked back. That's down like 17-18% now from this all-time high. Our target is a fractal of this channel. We know that channel is these two Murray math lines. So our target is actually in here, potentially, right? So it has sort of ways to go. If we look at the 60, just all day. This was a bit messy here, and then all of a sudden it collapsed. This can be a hard one to trade, so you pretty well got to have a decent structure on it. But overall, if you have a strategy, a hedging a portfolio, it's been pretty straightforward, really, right? And let's see what else on the Rusty that we need to look at. I think that pretty well covers that. There's your weekly. As I said, we've come right into potentially. There is your level, but you do have that Adams theory. You can see the all these things are basically double tops, right? Let's look at energy. Another big week for energy. We'll start off with natural gas. So Natty has had another big week today. Not sure why that's showing. Hang on. There we go. So natural gas had another big week today. Violent week, up and down. And it's just trading with the weather. And as I said at the top of the hour, if you're in these, you've got to understand weather, right? So, and you can see what's going on here. Let me come back to that, actually. Seems that we got an issue with the pricing right there. But let's come back to oil. And so oil this week, it came down and tested the Tenkan line here on the daily. We closed just above all this, so a very significant week. A big week. This was, I can't remember, was a 5 or 7 year high, but this was a nice short off the 8.8 on the daily. And if we go to the 240, you can see that was also 8.8. So that was actually plus 2.8 and recalced. And you can see here, see how it retests previous breakups and breakdowns. So keep that in mind. Everything's fractals. Everything's algorithms, and in between you got fundamentals. Most people have this fundamental news already, right? So there you have that. If we look at the weekly on oil, we have this is a 3 or 5. Remember I said for this to be a 3, we had to have a violent correction to finish the week. We didn't get that. So this here has to be a 3 of some degree. It can't be a 5. So, I mean, this can be your 5, right? If you count it out, we'll go through it later in the weekly report. But just think simple, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. correct, and then we want 5 good waves to be shown in this, okay? We went right to plus 2/8, and we saw that on the weekly. We saw the 8/8 on the other levels. So pretty clinical stuff, pretty simple. Natty, I'm gonna go redo these charts. It doesn't seem we have had some issues with the data provider this week that we're showing in the chart. This isn't, but you can see the same pattern. We did have a 20-cent move today. And that's all we've ever changed is it's freezing north of America. It's cold even down here in the energy capital of the world, but not like this cold. It's freezing up there. And so on these, I won't spend too much time on these. So I want you to look at these correctly. And you can see that we had this move up. There we go. And so we're right at these daily clouds would be our resistance. And see how we went sideways and then you get lifted up. We're just waiting on Meta Johnny to get back, and then we will talk about the crypto land amount destruction. Do you want to look at gold, Madavi? So here's gold. And again, this has been, we were only up a little bit here, but what I want you today, but over this week, we talked about this other day, how the market has changed looking for safe haven. So oil's one, gold's another. We saw safe haven currencies today pick up as well. Yen, Swiss franc, but gold's the other. And so whilst we closed right at, this is an hourly, so we couldn't get back over the 50, the Tenkan here, and the Cajun there. So that just held in there. Is Johnny in yet? Or
I'm here.
Oh, here you are. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. I think I was having a problem with that. So here's Madavi's our gold trader amongst us all. Any thoughts on that, mate?
Well, gold is always going to be God's currency. So
Whose
lots
currency?
of talks. They call it God's.
I've never heard that. I didn't know God had a currency. I thought it was red wine and fish, but
It's not a currency, but it's a pleasure of life. There's other ones too. But, yeah, God's money, if you will. It's not even a currency. It's a money system that's been around for a long time. So my thought is that with all these things happening, more every day passes, and there's news about crypto, the equities, the fear, some of the things I'm talking about in a minute. It all starts seeing, or it's all start pointing back to certain countries want to start going back to the gold standard. And one thing that I was watching is Russia has been buying up a ton of gold. So per capita, they have more gold than us right now. And you've got China and other. It's one of those things where a lot of people who really are believers in gold, that empires come, they go. I'm not, one of those doomsdayers, but they believe that this is probably a very safe hedge.
Well, for Russia in particular, they wanted to get off the dollar, US dollar, and also get off the IMF so they could be told what to do. So it was a smart move. So basically they had a choice. So you can only buy for international exchange, like in the basket, right? So you got gold, euro, yen, and they didn't want to be overexposed to anyone. So gold was a rational choice for them.
Absolutely.
Because they got obviously oil and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Right. So if this is gold, I don't know if I mentioned this. If you were to take today's valuation of what the dollars are worth, gold would be worth $15,000 an ounce. So that would be, if there was a total collapse, if there was to be a world currency that would be based on something, you kind of think of.
Well, the gold bugs always say that. I've heard that yeah. I don't quite agree with that, but
They just take it.
they think
Yes.
it, yeah.
Mathematically,
I agree
figured
more
out.
with Madavi's take that it's been a safe haven and we're seeing that a little bit now. Look, it's undervalued for different reasons as far as the gold bags, and they're looking for a reason. But I think Bitcoin was obviously one that took away some of your traditional fear factor. But it is interesting it hasn't reacted to inflation. What I think if it starts... So here's what I think. If I'm a gold bull, which I'm not, but if I was, like, put everything in gold kind of guy, I think if it breaks the new highs with this inflation, it'll go up. If that makes sense, it's kind of like oil. What made oil go up was oil. And I think what can make gold go up will be gold. And that's when I would buy gold, for my own personal view. Let's have a look at weekly. Might make more sense. So I think it's a classic herd thing. Like stocks, you see in the reverse. That's silver. Where's our gold weekly? I guess if we use this one and just make it weekly. So if it gets over this high here, 2000, which is really only $200 away, right? So if this is all a corrective waves, so there's two counts. This is either the top, 5 over 5, or this is a 1 over 5, which means this is a 2 and this can really explode a lot higher, right? So if gold, and there's any reason, it could be like you said, Russia might say, bugger it, they're already kind of doing it, right? I'm buying gold. Other countries could do the same thing. Commodity countries like Australia could say, you know what? We want to take it in barter in commodities. China, you can come up with 900 theories. But the market itself follows. So if this becomes hot, is Madavi here? Because I thought this is kind of his pet, this one. So that could get going. Like I could have told 100 people, and if you're pretty well known from Texas or Australia or the odd other Canada or somewhere like that, and you said about oil, you're an idiot, right? And now they all want to buy it. So that's your potential, and that's herd mentality, and that's what we talk about psychology a lot. Same thing in stocks. We all know people that told us we were stupid for not buying some of those stocks way up the top there. That's why we use Elliott and all the others. But things go up, down, up by the stairs and down by the escalator is an old commodity term, and you're seeing that in stocks. I mean, you just look at some of those stocks we've talked about. And what's the other? We should look at silver while we're here. I was wanting Madabi to join in, but he must have popped out for a sec there.
So one of the things that
here's silver.
I think we both watched the whole thing about gold and what's playing out with these different asset classes and the market and QE is, if the dollar collapses, everybody's currency is going to collapse. It's not like euro's going to be the only thing worth something. Yeah. Then it's where the IMF's coming in and they're looking at the DSR, and that's based off of a gold, standard. It's really one of those times where the Fed's going to be coming out and putting down a lot of restrictions. And I'm going to get more into that when we start talking about Bitcoin, because there's some really good news.
Everything you just said is also why Russia's buying gold, right?
That's what I was going to tell you.
Because they don't,
about Russia.
Like I said, when they got out of US, they had a choice of yen so what's in that? Yen, Aussie dollar,
so there's
Swiss franc,
the yen, the euro,
right, and their yuan has a small bit in that basket.
Yuan.
So they didn't want to be in all that for different reasons, right? And they're already doing barter with some of that. So gold gives them their own, and the ruble is basically has no one really accepts it. And it's got its own issues and the way there's a whole thing that's probably worth looking up, how the Bank of Moscow, the central bank of Russia, oil, and monitors their budget. There's a whole thing in it. It's not just, everyone thinks it's just Putin and this. There's actually a whole system, and there's someone ready to replace him, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of, and we've obviously seen that. And so a lot of what you've, we should probably talk about this now, is so you've seen obviously all that's in the news and what's hurting the market is this idea that the Ukraine the whole Russian-Ukraine thing, well, that's a long ongoing saga. For those familiar with it, Russia basically has an ethnic Russian area, ethnic Ukraine area, and a lot of that's to do with the Orthodox Church of the Ukraine versus the Orthodox of Russia. We won't birdie too much, but there's an area, top of my head, I'm not going to try and say them because I'm not very good at Russian words. So that's what Russia, they've been in a civil war for a number of times. Russia tried to put someone in Ukraine ages ago. America tried to put someone in. It's a mess. As far as Ukraine's concerned, it is used to be called the food bowl of the Soviet Union, so it's important. There's also the natural gas aspect. They owe a lot of money to Gazprom, etc. So it's not just a simple thing. We also know that the current US president and his son were embroiled in corruption in Ukraine. That became that whole thing about, the impeachment for the previous president, Donald Trump. There's a lot to all this. We then had 4 years of the Democrat Party of the United States going on about the Russian putting Trump in and all this sort of stuff. That all got debunked, but they keep on with that. And then I'm doing a pretty quick lesson here. Then we had U.S. president changes. We then the immediate thing was to try and hurt the Texans, etc., with their oil. So they do the federal land deal. That gets thrown out of court. Meanwhile, production doesn't catch up in the States because of the whole banks can't lend, blah, blah, blah. We fast forward, oil goes up as it does, right? Because the economy's keeping better. There isn't production to match it. Then we have the US president begging to OPEC, begging to Russia, who is accused of all this stuff with Trump, etc., to increase it. The current US energy secretary is massive anti-oil, fossil fuels, despite the need for it, laughs in press conference about increasing production. Am I missing anything? So here we are. All this, and this is the stupidity of it all that begging and posturing and making the US just look very, very weak and very divided internally as well. We now come at this thing with Russia in the Ukraine, and I can tell you this, I'm actually descended from the Scandinavian Baltic part of that neck of the wood. People are not happy with what the Americans created. The status quo was kind of happy but not unhappy. They're all aware of previous Russian, if you're from that neck of the woods, between the two wars and stuff. So that's now evolved into Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania saying, okay, we'll send some anti-missile, anti-tank stuff to Ukraine. And now Germany's got involved saying, hey, you can't send German stuff. This is all in, and it's a mess that didn't have to be created. And here, that's where we are. So I think, is that a good summary there, Johnny, of where we're at?
Now let me talk about Bitcoin and
right, and now
happening.
Let's talk about all that, because I think I got this up where we are politically or geopolitically.
Yeah. If you want to pull up, the Bitcoin market cap.
Oh yeah, sorry, mate. So this has been whacked pretty good today. So let's start with Bitcoin on a 60.
Actually, we're gonna do Bitcoin / ETH, because Bitcoin and ETH make up about 50% of the market cap of all these different altcoins. Okay, so it's pervasive and
all together. Okay.
Yeah, so when you follow those, you can kind of see, what is really happening with a lot of these others, and the declines. Just for people who are in it, extremely volatile, stressful. It's kind of like boxer who's on the ropes, It's
punch drunk, mate.
It's one thing after the other, just bad news. This is the overall market is just getting pummeled, like Mike Tyson in his one fight with what's his name, the big
Oh, and he bit his ear off, Holyfield. Yeah.
So but and
Well,
there's
someone's ear got
this.
bitten off today on Bitcoin, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's wife's ears missing. There's elements. Okay, so the first element would be the COVID Omicron thing, the same thing that's affecting a lot of things. There's fear about that. You got fear about inflation. We're at a 40-year all-time high of inflation. People don't know how, or I would say most
even
people
higher,
I talk to,
I think, in Germany and stuff.
but
right?
they don't even understand what it really means, and they'll soon find out.
How do they not know what that means? Because they're spending money.
Just don't. They see a slight increase in certain things that maybe they buy, but not
Yeah, I remember from the video what you're talking about.
Yes, it's
I
all
got you. Yep.
relative to what you buy and what you do. That's your bubble and your world, right?
Yeah.
It's like with other things.
Self-entitled and selfish
Right.
people. Yeah.
Right. Now you got the 10-year Treasury bond that's spiked. Okay, so
Well,
you
that's
got
come
also
back strongly last 2 days. Actually, bonds have been really strong last 2 days. So
people can put money in that and have less risk.
oh, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, safe haven, 100%. Yeah.
It's a safe haven. And now then also you've got S&P, the Nasdaq, and the equities market, all these things that are going down and creating more fear. And then you have tapering. You hear the word taper and you're like,
Yeah, they don't even know.
You understand tapering.
Right? Yeah.
No, they don't. It's like, okay, so they're not going to inject as much money in the market. What is that going to do? People know because it's happened before.
Actually, can you repeat that sentence again? Because I think a lot of people don't get that.
Which sense of tapering?
So it means they're not going to inject as much.
They're not injecting.
The
Yeah.
So they're still buying plenty of bonds to fund our massive bloody how many trillion deficit, right? I mean,
you just gotta understand. You create more money, so that supply of money makes it cheaper to borrow, and then easy money fuels the stock market. Bonds become less attractive, so you've got all these things, and then with interest rates going down, markets going up. It's like it's played out. I mean, now that you've lived through it, 10 years from now, you'll look back and say, I'll never close my eyes when that happens again.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I don't know how many times everyone said, this time it's different and all this. And if we've been around a bit, you've seen a lot of these bubbles. And they're all a little bit different. Like Bitcoin we've never seen before. Look at, before our eyes, we're seeing Bitcoin just drop $4,000, right? As we speak.
But just look, all these things that I've just listed, there's also now, like you mentioned, Russia has now made it so they're banning Bitcoin, they're banning all this stuff, and it's because of threat of their own monetary system, like China. Control,
I think it's
like China.
threat of that, but I think it's also for political control, because they don't want, specifically in Russia, they don't want protesters to be funded from it or opposition.
At the end of the day, governments are about control.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and Putin's all about control, mate. That's what Ukraine's all about.
Yeah, it's having an effect, definitely what's going on. So, we need to have changes in some things, and it's going to be the test of time. Be very careful if you're investing. There's so many things happening with our own central bank and the Fed meeting, try to put their arms around what could be a threat. But here's the thing. You got to remember, there's a whole big world out there, and the United States really thinks it's the boss of all. But I just looked up because in an interview that I heard, so many more countries that are going into the Bitcoin.
But no powerful ones, though. They're all little guys.
No, you'd be surprised. I pulled up the list. Let me go ahead and.
Hang on. Can you clarify what you mean there? Are you talking about like the Venezuela?
El Salvador.
Yes, but there's
So what happened with El Salvador is the United States government said, we're going to help you with infrastructure. We're going to help you with employment, all these things to help your people not suffer. They never received any of the promises. Do you think that El Salvador situation...
When we need him? This is right up his alley.
El Salvador wasn't picked out and, isolated as the only country that was promised probably something
Isn't there
was never
another South
delivered.
American country doing it too, other than El Salvador?
Yeah, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull it up real quick. I had it up here. I don't know what happened to it, but it's
Yeah, if you
pretty
have it
impressive.
so we can share it.
It's
would be
Mexico Mexico is looking at it now. Mexico is huge, right? Paraguay, I think it was Paraguay. Hold on, let me pull up all the countries. Bitcoin. All right, so here we go. We got a lot of Latin American ones. Argentina, obviously, they need some serious stability in their currencies. Mexico, like I mentioned, you've got also the large and very populated country of Brazil.
So it's also, well, let me ask this question, speed it up a bit. Is there any other stable, strong, anywhere outside South America like that's into doing, and you're talking about replace, so I know El Salvador's the only one that's replaced their currency effectively, right?
These are all countries who are all bullish on Bitcoin. Panama, another one, and let me mention Panama. Some of these countries that we're mentioning, what were their roles in the past? They've had some pretty pivotal roles in money,
and collapsing and sending banks broke,
and corruption and stuff. But at the same time, promises never delivered. Paraguay was the other one that I was mentioning. But El Salvador was the first real example. All these other ones, if you went through and read some of the stuff that the leaders of these different countries are stating, basically, we don't want to rely on anybody. We want to have a monetary system that's based on the control of a superpower, basically. And so I don't know. It's one of those things. It's all going to play into outcome of what it will end up, existing as. And other than that, my brother, I don't have much else to say.
Well, one thing I could about El Salvador, I mean, I'm not as well versed on it as you are, but my understanding was they converted a bunch of their assets into Bitcoin at a price a fair bit higher than this. So haven't they effectively, if it doesn't work out, haven't they effectively punted a lot of their country's assets on the value of Bitcoin?
That's the interesting thing. It's when you have somebody that takes and they airdrop basically 30 million wallets, they give people education, they provide their own energy for the use of it, and there's a community that's much bigger than we really think the United States is end all be all, many people, but beyond this, the entire world is looking so that they can have a way not have somebody control their property. The whole thing about the United States is life, liberty, and property. You do not want somebody control of your right arm, do you? It's your property. You don't want somebody controlling your money. So,
well, that's the U.S. though, but we're not El Salvador. But I get America's certainly let down a lot of these countries' military, the military-industrial complex, and all that. 100%. I get what you're saying.
The thought of what America is, it's everybody had, and they were in their own restricted, dictatorship-driven, country. They always heard, "Here's America, land of opportunity, freedom." And those are big things that still people today actually admire. A lot of people are very disgusted by our behavior. It would be Madavi's,
Right. Well, by the same token, a lot of these countries that hate the United States, it's pretty brutal for human rights over those. So I think where America's gone astray, from my point of view, in my opinion, is too much control and worship of money. I saw some statistic a few weeks ago, and there's like 10 of the richest people in the world. They've doubled in wealth since COVID came along. Your Bezos and all that. Now, most of them are American. There is the French guy, Bernard Arnault. I think if I'm saying his name right, I'm trying to remember what it was.
So he, with the richest guy in the world, is the guy that owns
Well, that's
and back
Bernard
then.
Arnault. I don't know if he is right now, but maybe he is. But anyway, the point being, in that same 2 years, which is I think what you're getting at, is that the rest of the world got very, very, very poor, particularly at COVID. They lost all their jobs or lockdowns and political rights. And so, yeah, and then you're talking about these mandates and just, certainly, yeah, 100%, I get where you're going. So,
But then remember also when they gave that stimulus, had to
stimulant.
make sure people.
Stimulant. Yeah.
Well, yeah, when COVID hit and they gave that
The
stimulus,
$2,000 or something.
the 2000, there were
Yeah.
people that were making more money with the government assistance not working. Really, I had a friend that worked for I think it's Saks Fifth Avenue, and she made maybe $3,000 a month. When stimulus came along with her unemployment and stimulus, she was making $4,000. Okay, so there were situations like that, and then other situations where people were receiving money. The thing is that they recognized it and they said, "Oh, that was not very well managed." So what the whole new CBDC and all these things coming out with digital money is they'll be able to not only track it, but if you get government assistance, if there's ever again a stimulus and they give it to you, that money is given to you, so you spend it for velocity. Okay, so your M2 times velocity equals your nominal gross domestic product. So they give it because they need your income becomes somebody else's income.
Right,
it becomes somebody else's
yeah.
money. That
And
velocity.
that's what they were hoping for, rather than
What they
punt it on.
didn't understand is that number one, a lot of these people stopped paying their rent. They started putting it in Robinhood and other places and losing it.
And now they've
That's
lost
one
it
thing.
all, right? And the rich
They
have
gave it
got
to
richer.
corporations
Yeah.
that did not use it to hire people, but to buy back stock or just to go buy a new house.
That's the bit that is pretty despicable. Yeah.
So now you got a project that went almost completely wrong with the best intentions, and you've got some of the people when Bernanke did Q1 the first time around, it was really almost like an experiment, and they were all excited about it, and it
definitely
showed
an
really a lot of
experiment,
promise.
Yeah.
And then now they're like, oh my God.
It's an expectation by the herd now, and a way. And you know what? I think one thing that, and I think Madhav would agree with, part of by doing all that is you then become entrapped, right? So then people, and you've seen it move forward and then in a world of partisan politics, you give them the money, they're on the teat, is what they used to say, right? Like envisage a nation that's where of goats or calves, however you want to put it, and then they become dependent on it. Now, so there's two theories on the stock market. One is the central bank. Well, it's more than two, but we'll go with these two. One is that Bernanke, the student of the Great Recession, Depression, to avoid it, he came to happen again. A replication is you got to keep people happy. Sentiment. The stock market is one of the bigger, even so people who aren't even in the stock market assume that the stock market is the economy. So the way it goes up or down affects their moods. So that's one, and that's part of the reason why the stimulus, and that's why they quickly rush in it. The other, obviously there's more to it, but this is that theory. The other theory is, and this is also a theory with Bitcoin, is that you get everyone enamored and controlled through buying Bitcoin, buying stocks, whatever it may be. All of a sudden they're rich, and it truly is transitory. They pull the rug, and boom, it's gone. And it's that easy. The rich become poor like that, and the powers that be even have more power. That's another big theory. We'll see how it plays out. And you just look at the chart we have right in front of us. We see Bitcoin going from 70,000 to right now to 36,700. You don't have to be a genius to work out that that's just lost half its value. Half its value. Half of 70,000, 35,000. So it's pretty easy. If we look at the other one, at Ethereum, almost 5,000. Now it's 25,000. Half its value. So if you bought this at that top, you've lost half your money. I don't care if it's hey, I'm out of the eyes of the this, that, and the other. Here's the other thing. A lot of these people didn't want to report taxes, right? Then all of a sudden, shies, meowed.
Oh, just remember one thing.
They're going to
Amazon
try to
and some of
claim
these
the
big
loss.
companies.
So they're now in the system, right? Boom.
So, like with some of the biggest boom tech companies that first went up and they were struggling, it's almost the same thing in the way that when we were like young or younger and the internet came out and you heard Amazon for the first time, kind of laughed, especially when they started giving huge valuations for some of these companies. So you've got to see that there's things that are forming. I think it's very similar to just a human. It's an S curve. There's the way that it just moves through the adoption, and along the way, now with technology derivatives, futures, and the things that can be injected, smarter investors. I think that plays a very important part, and you have to be willing to sit there and say, I'll ride this sucker down to 5,000, because as soon as it's 5,000, it's going to go up to 200, because then it's going to have a base that's been built, and it's going to attract a lot more people, and it's going to be a totally different animal. That's what a lot of people think. If it goes through 30 and it goes down, more buyers are going to come in. You have a spot market.
But that's all well and good. But the bottom line is it's lost half its value. So, yeah, I mean, if you had bought Amazon at $200 and you didn't get stopped out when it went to $10 or whatever it was, and then you held it, I mean, how many people actually do that in the real world? It's easy to look back as a Johnny hindsight and say, yeah. But when it loses not 80% of its value, which we're seeing now, so some of these tech stocks now that are being destroyed, or biotech, whatever, just name a company, will come back. But the majority won't. They will be worthless, bankrupt, get taken over. We saw what happened to Peloton, for example, right? And it's just.
Look at the chart that you have in front of you. You see, there's really large moves up, and then you see the down. Really large moves up and then down, and it's just like it's repeating a kind of a pattern.
It is a pattern through all speculation, but some of them never come back. You don't know for sure that Bitcoin doesn't become a tulip, right? Nothing's
With
ever
adoption
certain,
and
right?
all the people that are in it. That's the scary thing, is that so much right now momentum behind it. You have payment systems and things that are all integrating with it. You have now, and that's a scary thing, because the banks, they're scared. Let's just say banks are scared. You can stake your money, interest.
Banks are scared
Put
of
your
what?
money
Of Bitcoin?
of Bitcoin and the whole crypto.
Jamie Dimon doesn't seem to be too scared of it. Yeah, it's the biggest bank in the world.
He's going to be involved with it through a stable coin.
Yeah, but he's in control of it. He's not scared of Bitcoin. He likes the blockchain, right? And he has an investment.
Exactly. He
fund
likes
that
the
people
technology.
You know what I'm saying?
Here's why. You can take your money and you can put it, stake it, earn 5, 6, 7%, depending on where you go. Put your money in the bank, we're losing money. So just that is going to take, I would say, people like me at least, don't want to have their money sitting there losing, 5%, right, or 5 to 7%.
Okay, so you've just lost 50% if you put it in Bitcoin at 70,000. And if just say you own it at 30,000 and it went to 70,000, you didn't sell it, and now it's 36,000. It's transitory, right?
Well,
illusory.
And 6 months to maybe 200.
I mean, I don't look at something. I think you learn to get. It's like people that push the risk. Look at the junk bonds, and they take the risk off. And why would you? I've never understood why anyone would invest anyway at like -% in Europe, in the Bund or whatever, unless you have to. I mean, at the end of the day, a good investor or trader is patient and waits. I mean, Buffett's an example of that. But just generally, and you wait for your opportunity to strike. Because at the end of the day, most of these moves returns on a year you have to take that opportunity, and that's why buy the dip theory comes in. When it doesn't work, though, it's all about patience, and that's why we use charts. Look at Bitcoin is now under that weekly cloud, which it had to hold, right? So
that's what I'm saying. Be careful.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of
100%.
headwind, a lot of obstacles. It just ain't.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a method of transaction rather than something of true value versus gold or Swiss franc or whatever, even the US dollar. I know there's a fiat element to all this, but I mean, let's go back to the SPOOs and look at a weekly chart, for example. This was not sustainable, but they always go a lot further than what you want. But in reality, we're only down 400 handles from the bloody all-time high, and as you said, mate, it's like everywhere you look, it's the end of the world. This is just a standard straight. It hasn't even got the 50-day moving average.
Well, it's almost like they're throwing it out because fear, chaos, lose control. It's almost play. And you know what? I don't think half the people on TV or that are advocating or not advocating they don't even really understand the blockchain. Are a few people that do?
That. They don't even understand the S&P, right?
Yeah, exactly. They just push whatever.
I mean, I don't pretend that I understand it all. I'm educated a lot through what people like you have shown me and learned, but I certainly don't understand it 100%.
I got a video that I'll send you.
You and I, if we don't understand it,
really
we don't pretend to be understanding it, right?
A few people that do.
They don't even understand the S&P.
Some people,
we just got a message.
They get it, they don't.
Nightmare saying
they
great
just push whatever.
I mean, I don't pretend.
Yeah,
I'm glad you enjoyed. If you have any questions, anyone, people like you, just
but I don't.
Feel free to tell it or ask us.
And
and so on that, let's just compare apples to oranges. But we've come into the breakup point in the S&P 500, which obviously has some value.
They get it, they don't.
And if we go to crypto, what we noticed yesterday with the collapse that Ethereum hadn't caught up. If you have any questions, anyone on the downside, well now it has. But what we want, so I think what we don't know whether Bitcoin is going to go to 10,000 or 100,000. We don't pretend. We've come into the break. What we do know is there's a new evolving technology. But what we don't know also, can it be replaced by someone else? You know what I mean? If you have any questions,
everything can be replaced. Yeah.
Or is this
IBM was replaced.
So who we want? So I think we don't know.
Buster Video was replaced.
Yeah, so we don't pretend. We've come into the break. What's their name? What was it? Who was that one before? MySpace. So MySpace got replaced. That was it. So we don't know if Bitcoin's the MySpace or the Facebook.
Funny how that MySpace plays out too, because the brothers that robbed of the whole thing. It was the Harvard Connect, I think. It was Mark Zuckerberg, and settled for, I think it was $60 million. Went, invested in Bitcoin. Now they own an exchange called Gemini, involved in all these different NFT projects. Also doing metaverse stuff. They're like now almost Mark Zuckerberg they're leaving behind.
Yeah. Remember, that's a great discussion, yeah. Another important thing, and we can talk. We're just really. I don't think. Well, none of us. We don't doubt that there is something going special with crypto and what it means, and all the other things. The way the world's evolving. It's just a question of value. If it's worth 30,000 or 5,000 or 100,000, or it's going to be replaced. But what we are seeing is a very fast shift in technology and value. We obviously, when we saw things like NFT, we saw the concept of value has lost all reality, right? But then again, if those YouTube guys like what's his name, Paul, who thinks he's a world champion boxer, he's going to piss some money against the wall. buying some NFT,
Totally,
whatever.
totally.
But that's not what we're really talking about. Johnny's talking. We're talking about that evolving thing, and that's where you want to be at the coalface to see where that opportunity and also that change is. Because we've seen dramatic change in the last 2 years just of simple human rights, right? Which we talked about earlier with Russia and Ukraine and US and all these things like mandates and this hatred between, and it is hatred. The politics of hate, where if you don't agree with that, you're a traitor. What happened is having your own opinion or whatever, right? And I'm not talking
something interesting to say about that.
Right.
Okay. Something interesting to say is that man evolves. Started out with our home phones, got pagers. Okay.
Yeah.
Had a pager.
I remember that.
Pagers, then cell phones. Okay. Cell phones then had the new features where you could do pictures. Pictures then became videos. The social media and the way people are interacting socially is evolving. The internet, you could just think of it as it's just going to evolve to a place where you're going to be more interactive and available to do stuff. And you see companies like Zoom or the one that I use is Teams, but all of them, they're spending billions of dollars. Apple is spending billions of dollars. I didn't realize this, but one really cool thing that there's, in the metaverse, people say, oh, do this with the metaverse. Well, the Sandbox, for instance, Snoop Dogg has property there. He bought real estate. So if you want to have a place by Snoop Dogg's, place, you're going to pay a little bit more. But here's the value. When you buy the real estate, there's promotional things that they do. So for instance, Clinique wants to be in the metaverse, so they run a thing where they have these ladies put together, a little 2-page thing of why they should be the one selected. And then when they select them, these ladies get 10 years of Clinique product in the real world. There was a lipstick that was included in it. Lipstick's not even available. They get it free for 10 years, priority. So
I think the key is the combination factor, and I think that's the same with NFT. I mean, so you get particularly in collectibles, right? That I think, and actually, was it you that sent me? But Tom Brady actually has raised like 140 million or something through an NFT deal, because he realized, well, obviously he has power of the sports, but the combination is not just having something that I can put on my JPEG, but it's actually something meaningful to go with it, which is exactly what I think you're talking about with Clinique, but on a different thing. I think the problem people have with Metaverse is Facebook and Zuckerberg try to redirect, right? So it's more the name, and Facebook is the people that, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but he's one very small part.
So I think if we just call it what it really is, a digital world, internet, whatever you to call it, I think then people just go, I got you.
So yeah, if you think meta means beyond, verse means universe.
Yeah, but it's the word being, so that guy's co-opted it, and there's a lot of people, I think that's the big negative. And so
it really does come down to one thing that people need to really understand.
It's not new, in other words. So.
It's been around for years. I talked to a lady that's been a consultant for some of the biggest projects out there, like Decentraland and Sandbox. And the one thing is that it consists of entertainment, gaming, and workspace. People will be able to train and do things. There's goods and services. So everything we do today, it's going to be put into the metaverse. Okay, building a digital world beyond the world we know. So that whole thing then allows these games to tokenize it and come up with a way that they can make games decentralized. I was talking to you earlier, and you said EA, is this, that, and the other. Well, you have these new games that are coming out, and these games are play to earn, allow people to have a marketplace there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
during the pandemic, I mentioned that the Philippines, people were making a living doing the NFTs, and that's why Oxy Infinity became one of the top. And it's very primitive, and there's new things that are coming out that are so cool.
Well,
like go to Star
Minecraft's a good
Atlas.
example of that too.
yeah, all those things. But these companies like Apple are getting into these. They're called haptics or haptics. Haptics are all these different devices that you put on your body that give you sensory. So when you shoot a gun, you'll get kickback. When you're doing something, you'll feel like the force of whatever it is that's pushing against you to open a door. Those are the things that are down the road. Right now, it's just really a way to interact and the things that
Well, I mean, I think Microsoft's the fact that with the Activision buy shows that the big players are aware of it. As I said, I think it's with a lot of people that joke about metaverse, and we all know that. I think it's just all either they're
saw a movie.
They're anti-Facebook, and so.
And the cool thing though is that a lot of the social media companies that will exist beyond the blog, totally secure, not selling your information and whatever you share with.
Seen in the market, they've been destroyed. 52-week lows today. Snap, Twitter. I mean, you got that bloke with a bloody nose piercing. What's his name? I mean, Square. It's just stupidity and irresponsible what they've done with shareholders' money and people. But people fell for that trap. I mean, and I think the way for whatever we want to call the metaverse, I think you got some really solid points there. It's evolving into something more tangible out of all that, and the wreckage out of all that. They're not going to all be around, the Snaps and the Twitters and the Facebooks, and you can only have so many, and there's a lot of people burnt. They become angry, and we've literally seen in 2 weeks go from, who wants cash? Cash is worthless, to cash is king. As I've said many times, cash is what you use, and you've seen that in the market. That's why the SPOOs are falling 150 like that. Right before our eyes, we're watching Bitcoin get destroyed. So you got to, at the end of the day,
you'd be better off.
Huh?
I said, if you would have had cash, you'd be better off when the market collapses. Or if it's the same thing with oil and gas. You need all these things.
Well, you don't need the Bitcoin. You do need oil and gas, right?
Well, you do need to have people.
Mate, I've got through life
fine
of never having a Bitcoin.
Not Bitcoin itself, but the blockchain. Just remember, that was just the forefront leader. Then started, out all these other new things.
It may well be. So there you where it is, but it's in early stages. But what happens in manias and tulips and reality gets left behind, and oil and gas was a good example. It's all well and good to do all this stuff with the transition energy, but you got to do it, right? And so I think we're seeing a transition into crypto. I actually we talked about this, and we're going to have, actually, what we should probably do, and we'll come back on and wrap up this markets one and talk more about this in a minute, because I want to pull up that Fed document we talked about yesterday where they're looking at it, and there's some important points that they made, that the conspiracy theory that a lot of people have that are anti-money or anti-Bitcoin, I think a lot of it gets showing up on that, and Johnny's got some real good points on it. So let's wrap up this bit about the markets. Next week we do have the Fed. There's a lot so the question's going to be next week as far as the Fed goes on the FOMC. Are they going to speed up the taper? There's been a lot of talk about the March meeting where they're going to cut 50%. To do that, they've got to get to zero taper, right? Whether they do it, they're going to be mindful. Yes, there's inflation. They also are well aware that a lot of it is transitory, right? In the sense that Powell means, and he made very bloody clear that he can't control supply. So they have to work out what they don't want to do, and Brainard made it very, very clear about jobs. They're probably not shocked about the S&P move, right? And they're not going to be shocked about the Bitcoin move. But what probably they didn't expect the trash to fall as fast as what it did. Some of the tech stocks. They're probably unnerved how fast Netflix fell overnight. That's the sort of stuff they're going to be looking at. And they're also going to be happy that the Treasury 10-year note and we will talk about this in the weekly. We'll talk more about it, but how, and then Johnny talked about this, how that regave it its safe haven, as did gold and all that. That's the sort of thing they want to know, So we got that. There's more earnings out next week. We're really just starting the earnings season. We got all the big energies. We had Schlumberger today, but we'll have all them start coming out. Other techs, other Dow components. So there is all that. So, and we'll wrap that up. And those listening live, Johnny and I will be back in about 5 minutes or so. Thank you for joining us. Subscribe. What do you say, Johnny? Smash the like button.
Subscribe, smash the like button, ring the bell.
Do all that. And the more we do, the more great stuff we'll bring out to you. We got no interest in. We just want. Well, we want you to be better informed. If our views are crap, that's all well and good. It's a free discussion if they're not. But our idea is to help you in your trading and investment. It's it's really that simple. So the more supporters, obviously, it improves the ranking and all that sort of stuff with YouTube algorithms. I understand trading algorithms. I don't really understand Google's algorithms. So we have that website out for you, and so that's all. The idea is to fund all that, which is basically I'm doing out of my back. We're doing out of our back pocket with our trading. So it's not. So anyway, do that. We will see you in a little bit. Look for our weekly, and we'll be back in